The UUCT care team follows up with congregants who are experiencing joys or sorrows. The care team also addresses needs of congregants. The care team can be contacted by email at careteam@uutampa.org. And now to our service.
Good morning. My name is Ed Benedict, and I will be your worship associate today, in which we're celebrating Father's Day. Our title for this service today is For Fathers and for Fatherhood Itself. And our guest speaker, the Reverend Newcomer, will be speaking later on. Today, I want to welcome you to our virtual service, which is on Father's Day. And just an interesting note is that there are some of the congregation which are actually meeting for the first time in the sanctuary and watching this service live there. And this is our first steps before coming back to the church. I hope soon we'll be able to see everyone in a live situation. Thank you. I light our chalice today with these words from Peter Friedrichs. For sleepless nights awaiting the curfew breakers, for anxious hours as the driver instructor, for hours spent in sidelines cheering and watching school plays, sometimes resting our eyes, for the pressures of breadwinning and waiting till your father gets home, for moments and monitoring moments, for making up answers when you just don't know, but are expected to because you know everything, for scrapes and boo-boos, kisses and band-aids, for hugs and kisses and silliness and play, for bedtime stories and early morning ice time, for all the aftershave and ties received as gifts, and for handing out car keys, waves goodbye, for father-daughter wedding dances, for cradling grandchildren for the first time, and for the moment and all the meaning in the role of a lifetime. We light our chalice for fatherhood and for fathers. Our guest speaker this morning is the Reverend Dr. James Newcomer, who grew up in the Cleveland area and has been a part of the Unitarian Universalist movement for more than 60 years. He was ordained in 2001, and he has served Unitarian Universalist congregations in Tennessee, New Mexico, New York, and Georgia. He and his wife, Ina, moved to Palm Harbor in the summer of 2018. The Reverend Dr. Newcomer has given us some introductory words which say that some of us have had great fathers, others not so much. Yet we will probably all have people in our lives who fathered us. Maybe an uncle, an aunt, or a cousin, or a grandparent. Let us celebrate them and whoever they have been on this day, recognizing fatherhood. And now, the Reverend Dr. James McCummer.
Good morning. I want to share a Aesop fable once again with you this morning. This one is entitled The Farmer and His Sons. Appropriate for Father's Day, no? So a rich old farmer who felt that he had not very many days left to live called his sons to his bedside. "My sons," he said, "heed what I have to say to you. Do not on any account part with the farm that has belonged to our family for so many generations. Somewhere on it is buried a rich treasure. I do not know where it is exactly, but it is there, and you will surely find it. Spare no energy and leave no spot unturned in your search." The father died, and no sooner was he in his grave than the sons set to work, digging with all their might, turning over every foot of ground with their spades, and going over the whole farm 2-3 times. No hidden gold did they find, but at harvest time, when they had settled their accounts and had pocketed a rich profit, far greater than that of any of their neighbors, they understood that the treasure their father had told them about was the wealth of a bountiful crop, and that in their industry they had found the treasure. Aesop's moral: industry is itself a treasure, and a good lesson on Father's Day, I suppose, too. I wanted to share a Father's Day prayer with you this morning. This is written by Kirk Lodeman Copeland, an old friend of mine who was for many years the senior minister at the First Universalist Church of Denver until he retired just a couple of years ago. It goes like this. Let us praise those fathers who have striven to balance the demands of work, marriage, and children with an honest awareness of both joy and sacrifice. Let us praise those fathers who, lacking a good model for a father, have worked to become a good father. Let us praise those fathers who, by their own account, were not always there for their children, but who continue to offer those children, now grown, their love and support. Let us pray for those fathers who have been wounded by the neglect and hostility of their children. Let us praise those fathers who, despite divorce, have remained in their children's lives. Let us praise those fathers whose children are adopted and whose love and support has offered healing. Let us praise those fathers who, as stepfathers, freely choose the obligations of fatherhood and earn their stepchildren's love and respect. Let us praise those fathers who have lost a child to death and continue to hold the child in their heart. Let us praise those men who have no children, but cherish the next generation as if it were their own. Let us praise those men who have fathered us in their role as mentors and guides. Let us praise those men who are about to become fathers, and may they openly delight in their children. And let us praise those fathers who have died, but live on in our memory, and whose love continues to nurture us. Amen. And good morning again. Many of you know that a lot of internet services, ones that keep photographic files on hand, they occasionally give you a flashback to the time various photos were taken. It asks you, what were you doing 3 years ago today? And there on the screen are a couple of pictures from that date. Oh, there I am shoveling snow. That had to be more than just a couple of years ago. Remember that 20-inch snowstorm? Yeah, back in 15? Oh, glad I'm not around that anymore. Or sometimes you don't recognize the scene at all. Where is that? What's going on there? I had one of those a week or two ago. I had trouble recalling what the event in the photo was. It took a few minutes, and then I realized, hey, that's a cemetery. It must have been, yes, in 2017, in June, when I attended the burial of my aunt, my mother's sister, the last survivor of that family. That recollection stirred others. I remembered traveling to Battle Creek, Michigan for the interment. Her ashes were the last to fill the family plot. Many years ago, my grandfather, my mother's father, bought that plot with 6 lots, room for 6 traditional casket burials. He intended it for himself and his wife, my grandmother, and their 2 daughters and their husbands. I'm sure Grandpa saw this acquisition as part of his fatherly responsibility, a resting place for all in his immediate family. Grandpa was the first to pass on, but Grandma threw a bit of a monkey wrench into things when she decided Grandpa required 2 of the cemetery lots for his casket and a rather large headstone. I'm not sure how this worked exactly, but I remember my mother became concerned about whether there would be room for everyone when the time came. Then she learned that cremated remains required only half a lot, so she felt better. She and my father had already decided to be cremated. They were Unitarians, and cremation had been the norm in our tradition for many generations. So after Grandpa died, Grandma was the next to be buried there. I had been in the Army when Grandpa died, so I was unable to attend his burial. I did attend Grandma's interment, again a traditional casket burial. Then my father passed in 1986, and I traveled to Battle Creek once again. Then my uncle passed, followed by my mother in 2013 at age 93. And then finally, my aunt, my mother's younger sister, passed in 2017 at age 94. The family plot is now filled. All the markers are in place. And sadly, I now have no compelling reason to ever visit Battle Creek again, the place where I'd spent many summer vacations as a kid, and my parents both grew up. That part of my life is done. Yet I will not soon forget that there are 3 fathers interred in that family plot. My grandfather, father of 2, and grandfather of 5. My father, father of 2, and grandfather of 4. And my uncle, father of 3, and grandfather of 3. Given that grandfathers often do a fair amount of fathering, there was certainly a significant amount of fathering undertaken by these 3 men. They were unrelated to each other, yet they shared some purpose in life. You see, one of the tasks that parents share is to prepare their offspring for their unfolding lives. Fathers and mothers pave the way for the next generation. And yes, some fathers and mothers are better at fulfilling this task than others. The 3 men resting in that plot performed this task reasonably well. All of their children have fared successfully. To be sure, we've all had trials, tribulations, and suffered setbacks. Yet we have come back from these, and we have found our respective ways in the world. Personally, I was closest to my own father, with my grandfather a somewhat less influential father figure. My uncle was not nearly as close, yet I saw him in his father role as mostly positive as well. And they all fathered all of us to some degree or other. Now they're all gone. And it is unlikely that I will return to where they rest. But of course, their fathering lives on in me, my brother, and in our cousins, not to mention our offspring and their offspring. Father's Day has been around in one form or another since the Middle Ages. Fatherhood and paternal family bonds have been celebrated in the Catholic world as St. Joseph's Day on March 19th each year. Conquistadors brought the celebration to Latin America, where in many countries March 19th is still observed as honoring fatherhood. The US date, the 3rd Sunday in June, has also been adopted by a number of countries. In all, over 40 countries have a Father's Day observance of some kind or another. The Catholic Church's recognition of fathering dates to about 1400 of the Common Era. So it's been around for more than 600 years. The civic celebration of Father's Day in this country did not begin until the early 20th century, however. And as you might guess, it quickly became a largely hallmark holiday meant to complement Mother's Day and provide respite for hardware stores and the like. The initial recognition of Father's Day in this country was actually a somewhat somber event. In 1907, some 361 men died in the Monongah mining disaster in West Virginia. Of these, 250 deceased coal miners were fathers, and around 1,000 children were left fatherless. In 1908, the next year, a nearby Methodist church celebrated a Father's Day in memory of these lost fathers. As an aside, I find it rather ironic that there is now this great political emphasis on trying to maintain employment in the dangerous work of mining coal, even as its costs clearly outweigh its benefits. At about the same time, several other West Virginia locales organized Father's Day celebrations, and just about all of them thought they were the very first ones to do it. Too bad there was no Facebook in those days or some other social media that could clearly demonstrate which observance was truly the first. Be that as it may, politicians waffled on making Father's Day in any way official until 1966, when President Lyndon Johnson issued a proclamation. Later, in 1972, President Richard Nixon signed a law that made Father's Day a holiday to be celebrated on the third Sunday in June. Yes, Nixon was able to do a few good things. But what is it that this holiday recognizes? What is fathering? What does fatherhood mean? I mentioned that the role of mothers and fathers is to prepare their children to make their way in the world, to instill values and knowledge about life as we live it today. Many people would agree, particularly those in middle age or beyond, that men and women bring different skills to the nurturing task. You know, that men are from Mars and women are from Venus business that used to be around a few years ago, that mentality. The thinking is that women supply nurturance that focuses inwardly on the family and on interpersonal loving relationships. Men supply nurturance that addresses dealing with or competing in the outside world. An example would be how to get ahead in economic endeavors. This division of labor in the realm of nurturance can certainly be traced back to the earliest human communities, where the physically stronger males went out to hunt while women stayed in the villages to tend to the cooking fires and nurse infants. Clearly, physical strength is no longer a dividing factor it once was. As physical strength has become less a determinant of socializing roles, machinery and technology have made intellectual strength a more critical determinant of a person's ability to become successful in the economic world beyond the family. So, nurturing roles, once relegated by gender, fathers' and mothers' roles were quite different. Those roles have given way to what we might call fuzzier roles. By that I mean the division of labor is less dichotomous, less gender specific, and more fluid than it was even just a couple of generations ago. Some time ago, I happened across a clip from Leave It to Beaver, that quintessential all-white suburban family TV sitcom from the late 1950s. Wally, the Beaver's older brother, and their dad are outside at the barbecue grill. Wally asks why his mom always does the inside cooking while Dad does all the outdoor cooking. Ever so thoughtfully, Dad responds predictably, "A woman's place is in the home, so she might as well be in the kitchen. Besides," he goes on, "women needs all kinds of handy, labor-saving equipment, blenders and graters, I suppose, handy in order to be able to do the work. Cooking outdoors is far more rustic, and men are better suited for that kind of work." We can only imagine how this affected Wally's view of gender roles when he might have entered adulthood himself. And in the space of 3 generations, there have been some encouraging changes. I remember a fairly recent commercial on TV where a father and his daughter are having a little tea party. He's a huge, tattooed, long-haired hulk of a man who probably rides a chopper-type motorcycle. He's the type you don't want to run into in a dark alley or even an alley in bright daylight. A really tough-looking guy. But he sings "I'm a Little Teapot," that song, with his daughter, and then gets down on the floor to sip pretend tea with her. It's all about effective fathering and how we as men can nurture without the gender stereotypes of the Beaver generation and before. I need to point out that not all of us had effective, nurturing biological fathers, regardless of generation. For some, the example set by our fathers may have been one that we sought not to follow because we saw it as one that was unhealthy. For others, perhaps our biological fathers were not available to us for any one of a number of reasons. In this kind of instance, it is very likely that someone else in our life came to the fore. It might have been a step-parent, a grandfather, a brother, an uncle, a teacher, a friend, a spouse, or even our mother. Almost all of us have been fathered along the way by someone. And this day is, in my mind, set aside to recognize any and all such contributors to our lives. And now I hope that my thoughts this morning have awakened some memory of yours about someone, your father or someone else who fathered you along the way. If you attend the UU Church of Tampa virtual coffee hour on Father's Day, on that Sunday, that would be a good time to lift up that memory and share briefly your recollection of being fathered in your life. I invite you to do so. And may we all, on this Father's Day, honor our fathers or those who have fathered us in life. May it be so. And amen.
To support the UUCT with your generous financial gifts, please go to the UUCT website and click on the Click Here link to donate. It will take you to our donation page, and you can securely make your donation to the church. Thank you.
Some just clap their hands as the balls for anything they got. Listen to the bass, it's the one at the bottom where the bullfrog croaks and the hippopotamus moans and grunts and the big cat too. And the old cow just goes blue. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low, and some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone line. And some just clap their hands as the balls for anything they got. Meow! The dogs and the cats, they take up the bell where the honey comes and the cricket fills the grumpy belly call. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low and some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. And some just clap their hands as the balls for anything they got. Listen to the top and the little birds singing and the melodies and the idols ringing and the bell plays over everything and the blackbird is so free. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low and some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. And some just clap their hands as their balls for anything they got. Singing in the night time, singing in the day, and the little duck quacks and he's always great. And the elder has got much to say, and the monkey pond talks to himself. All God's creatures are a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands as their balls for anything they got. It's all sings over the roads out everywhere. The apple comes in the alligator and the fly opens up and the turtle down. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low, and some sing high, some sing high, some sing loud on the telephone wire. And some just clap their hands, their paws, their hooves, their jaws, their tails, their claws, or anything they got.
We extinguish our chalice today with these words from Kirk D. Lodeman Copeland. Let us praise those fathers who have striven to balance the demands of work, marriage, and children with an honest awareness of both joy and sacrifice. Let us praise those fathers who, lacking a good model for a father, have worked to become a good father. Let us praise those fathers who, by their own account, were not always there for their children, but who continue to offer those children, now grown, their love and support. Let us pray for those fathers who have been wounded by the neglect and hostility of their children. Let us praise those fathers who, despite divorce, have remained in their children's lives. Let us praise those fathers whose children were adopted and whose love and support has offered healing. Let us praise those fathers who, as stepfathers, freely choose the obligation of fatherhood and earned their stepchildren's love and respect. Let us praise those fathers who have lost children in death and continue to hold the child in their heart. Let us praise those men who have no children but cherish the next generation if they were their own. Let us praise those men who have fathered us in their role as mentors and guides. Let us praise those men who are about to become fathers. May they openly delight in their children. And let us praise those fathers who have died, live on in our memory, and whose love continues to nurture us. That concludes our service today. Thank you for attending. I hope you've gotten something from our time together today that will nourish your spirit in the coming week. And until we meet again, please go in peace and be kind to each other. Goodbye.